welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It is now the 17th of March in Israel and apparently in the United States too, where Grand Inquisitor Dr. Mike Duran is once again in a hotel room. Mike, do you ever work?
I work in hotel rooms, of course.
I'm not going to ask you what you do. I'm Gadi in Tel Aviv, and it may well be that we will have to stop this recording once again because sirens abound. You say abound in Israel, and apparently we haven't yet exhausted the ballistic missile stockpile of Iran. I don't know if you saw this, Mike, but the Babylon Bee were so funny. Had a story that said that Iran has huge stockpile of supreme leaders.
I did see that. Yeah.
And apparently still Mujtaba is still the supreme leader at this time, is he not?
He is.
So why don't we start, as is our habit, with the headlines?
Gadi, Israel's defense minister, announced overnight that airstrikes in Tehran killed Ali Larijani, Iran's top national security chief. He's the effective wartime leader of the country following the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. This is the most significant elimination by Israel and the United States since the killing of Khamenei, likely to disrupt the leadership at the top of the Iranian government. Over the weekend, President Trump and his top aides framed their Iran war as a resounding military success, but they implored other countries to join their efforts to open the Strait of Hormuz. Trump told reporters Sunday that the administration had reached out to a number of countries, but declined to say who among them had agreed to help the United States. Meanwhile, American allies around the world have publicly responded coolly to President Trump's call. The sharpest refusal came Monday from Germany, whose defense minister said, "This is not our war. We did not start it." Top officials in Japan, Italy, and Australia said Monday that their countries would not participate in efforts to open the strait. Israel told the United States that its stocks of ballistic missile interceptors are running low. However, Israel's public messaging doesn't admit to any such shortage. The IDF spokesman told CNN 2 days ago that Israel has no shortage of targets or plans. "We have thousands of targets ahead," he said, adding that operational planning with the U.S. runs through at least Passover, that's some 3 weeks away, with contingencies extending 3 weeks beyond that. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Israel has opened up a ground operation designed to weaken Hezbollah and strengthen the defenses of the communities in the north of Israel. This campaign will not be short, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir said during remarks at the Northern Command. In Iran, Gadi, Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader, issued a statement vowing to avenge the blood of the martyrs. He called on Iran to continue its attacks on the Gulf countries, on the Gulf allies of the United States, and to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. Over to you.
You know, Mike, there was a commentator on Israeli television that said that eliminating Khamenei was a mistake because Mujtaba is even more radical, and we've just gotten ourselves in trouble. Do you remember that the Cold War analysts who used to say that behind Stalin are the real hardliners that he had to satisfy?
I don't think we should think of it like that. This whole hardliners versus moderates, as I've said here many times, I think that was always kind of a fiction. But we do have to realize that the war has created a kind of regime change that's already taken place in Iran, or it has sped up the regime change that was underway. And what we now have is an IRGC dictatorship. That's what Mujtaba means. Mujtaba is not a civilian leader. He's not the supreme leader.
In the religious sense. But I interrupted your bulletin. Do we have
no,
headline?
That's enough. No, those are the most important stories.
So I think one other important story is a piece by Mike Duran in the Wall Street Journal asking what are, or I'd say, suggesting an alternative path to the declared war aims. In the case of Trump, it's really hard to say what the war aims are because he said many things. But it's a good time to remember. We now have a quote of the week, and that is not the quote. There is another quote. But I was reminded of Bismarck's remark that went something along these lines: "Woe to the leader who, at the end of the war, cannot justify it as he did in the beginning." So it's a tricky business to declare war aims, and it's usually advisable to be conservative.
Absolutely. Trump made this mistake in June because in June he tweeted unconditional surrender, and then he stopped the war. And the Iranians never, in their public messaging, both to their own public and to the world, they never missed the opportunity to remind everyone that Trump stopped the war. They didn't. They never accepted the ceasefire. They just stopped firing. And they are trying to set the conditions, the impression that this war is going to end the same way, that they are going to outlast the United States. And they might. That's why I wrote the article in the Wall Street Journal. I don't want to be defeatist. As I've said many times, Iran is going to come out of this war weaker than it began, significantly weaker. But the question is how much weaker and for how long? Can it rebuild? Those are the key questions. And there are two clocks now, that's what I say in the article, that are running. One clock is the American and Israeli military pressure on Iran to bring its leadership to its knees to accept American terms. And the other clock is the economic pressure that the regime is bringing on the United States, economic, political pressure, also military pressure on Gulf allies, pressure on stockpiles of interceptors and so on, that's going to lead Donald Trump to just declare a victory. And you can see in some of Trump's messaging when he says, oh, they're already defeated, we got rid of their Air Force, we got rid of their Navy, they're a defeated power, that he's setting the conditions to frame, if he decides to end the war now, that he can frame it as a great American success. But the problem with that messaging of Trump, that we've already defeated them, is that we clearly haven't, because they've closed the straits and they're keeping the strait and they're keeping it closed. They're causing an enormous amount of pain economically to our allies around the world. And they still have missile and drone arrays that are in good working order. And that is the essence of their power, are the missile and drones and the ability to close the strait with them.
And it's a good time to remember that you have been warning from the stockpiling of drones and missiles for a long time and saying that this is a significant change in the balance of power in the Middle East. When was it that you wrote that piece, Mike? It was Tablet, I think?
Yes, Overmatch. We wrote that, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. But is
that you and John Casopoulou, or you
Yeah.
and Tony?
No, me and Casopoulou. Because John Casopoulou has been on top of this. I first met Casopoulou. John Casopoulou is an open source military analyst, the best in the business of open source military analysts. And I met him in 2019 after the Abqaiq, after the Houthis hit the Abqaiq. I think it was the Houthis, but the Iran or its proxies hit the Abqaiq refinery in Saudi Arabia. And Casopoulou explained to me then that the Saudis did not have an answer to the Iranian weaponry. So I've been focused on this since that moment. This is a huge deficiency in not just in American defenses in the Middle East, globally. The China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have a strategy to weaken us by focusing on this vulnerability, that none of our defenses are adequate to defend against these weapons. And remember, as I've said, it's not really a weapon system, these drone arrays and ballistic missiles. Clearly they are, but it's a defense economics strategy, because they're throwing up stuff that's very cheap to build, and it costs an enormous amount of money to shoot it out of the air. And we simply don't have the money and the stockpiles to take care of to shoot all of these things out of the sky.
But the war was generally conceived in a way that would disrupt that calculation, because, as you explained to me repeatedly here, if your strategy is only defense, then the other side achieves escalation dominance. And the idea of this war is now to not to intercept the drones, but to exact such a price from Iran that it would make its war inconceivable, or at least not feasible in the long run.
It's hard to do that, though. You see that. Look at Israel and Hamas. Israel has defeated Hamas militarily. By any military standard, Hamas has been defanged. But Hamas is still in control of the population there. And the minute it gets an opportunity, it will rebuild, despite all of the calculations that we have in Western countries about preserving our economics, our economies, about protecting our civilians. None of these calculations matter to these people. Not at all. The IRGC will fight the West, the United States, Israel, the Gulf allies, until the last Iranian. They don't care. I mean, maybe they care on some level, but not like they're not politically vulnerable to public opinion the way we are. Not at all. And so they're defining survival as victory. And if they do survive, and they show that they were able to hold the entire world economy hostage, then they are demonstrating their value to China and Russia. And China will come in right behind them, as they have done many times before. Right after the war, they'll come in and help them rebuild.
The situation probably would have been different if the United States had more allies like Israel, and not like Germany, Japan, and the rest of the Europeans, which are now basically helping Iran.
Yeah, well, their worldview is confused. It's totally confused. They are objectively our allies. Their interests are bound, regardless of whether they like Donald Trump, don't like Donald Trump, regardless of whether all of his policies toward them have been what they want. Their interests are inextricably bound up with the American interest and the Israeli interest in this. And if you stop the war now, and you allow these guys to survive, and you give them the honor of having fought the United States and forced it to call a ceasefire, then you're only building a rod for your own back. This will come back to haunt the West, all of these countries, because they will be blackmailed. They've already been blackmailed in many ways. They will be blackmailed in the same way.
That's disgusting, because it's like they've lost their perception of their own interest. It's like they suffer from an autoimmune disease in which they apply a domestic policy which basically surrenders before the jihadis. We see that, like in the protection of women's rights in Europe, the protection of Jews, and their insistence on standing on their own values. If when a journal like Charlie Hebdo is attacked because of publishing caricatures of Prophet Muhammad, and your reaction is to make laws against blasphemy rather than against terrorism, then you are giving up your spine.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in the West. There's a lot of that in America. I was up in Canada. There's a lot of that in Canada. Clearly in Britain. Also, it's goes way beyond just the ideological or political. We've had very, very short-sighted energy policies in the West for the last several decades. So what we've done is we have taken our natural advantage, which is plentiful oil supplies, and we have handed the advantage to Russia, Russia can blackmail Europe with its gas supplies, and then we have by moving toward very short-sighted green energy policies or renewable energy policies, wind and solar, we have turned China into an energy superpower. It has the first mover advantage on renewable energy technologies, electric cars, windmills, solar panels, etc. At the same time, because it gets cheap oil from Iran and Russia, it can behave as if it's an oil-rich country, and it can actually export refined product to American allies, even though it itself has absolutely no reserves to speak of oil and gas. So what Donald Trump is trying to do is reverse all that, and trying to, I think, return American control of the Persian Gulf as we knew it during the Cold War. But this is a bigger lift than he thought it was.
So is the question regime change, yes or no, or is the question opening the Hormuz Strait, yes or no? The Hormuz Straits, yes or no? Do you think Trump gave up on either or perhaps both?
No, he clearly hasn't given up. He's expending a lot of political capital. I mean, the question is, how long will he go? Well, and what needs to happen is he has to destroy the IRGC. That's he has to break the back of the IRGC, and in particular, the units that control the drones and the missiles. They're still operating. They're still in good working order. Look, there are tankers, oil tankers, that are going to India that are getting through the strait because the Indians are negotiating with the Iranians, and they're negotiating safe passage. So it's not just that these guys, I'm talking about the drone and missile arrays and their teams, it's not just that they're getting shots off and hitting the occasional tanker running through the strait and then scaring everyone. They are actually also providing safe passage to tankers that are going to China and to India, while threatening those that are not that have not negotiated with them. The Houthis are doing the same thing, by the way. The Houthis have opened companies in Europe, front companies in Europe, where shipping companies that want safe passage will pay a bribe to that company, and then they get through the Bab el-Mandeb. This long term is absolutely unacceptable to the West, or it's a recipe for disaster. So we have to open it up. Oddly though, I don't think the administration, the Trump administration, and the Israelis saw this coming. Someday we'll find out. I don't like to say this because the left, the New York Times, is making a big deal about it, saying they weren't prepared for this. And I don't like to pile on, because I think it's absolutely necessary to do this, and I think we can do this. I think it's totally winnable, but it's gonna require a few weeks of pain in order to win it. But I don't think they saw this coming. Their behavior, the fact that they didn't put together the coalition to open the strait before the war began suggests that they didn't see this coming.
So what is your suggestion in case the American president gives up on total surrender, opening the Straits of Hormuz, and regime change, as you laid it out in your Wall Street Journal piece?
The maximum pressure 3.0, that Iran is going to come out of this weakened. It's going to come out severely weakened. It's going to need a lot of money to rebuild the facilities that have been that have been destroyed. We can control the money now. We've always been able to control the money. We haven't always wanted to pay the economic and political cost of controlling. I'm talking the flow of money to the Iranian government. But if Trump is forced, for whatever reason, to stop this war before breaking the back of the IRGC, then I think they should really focus on maximum pressure 3.0, going after the banks in the Gulf, in the UAE, where all of the shell companies that process Iranian oil sales to China, keep their money. We know where it is. We just haven't wanted to go after it. Because it means going after the banks, and then a bunch of other steps as well. But the main thing is economic pressure. We've got to keep it on the regime. I hope that Trump goes the distance and we solve this problem militarily right now. That will change the balance of power in time for Trump's summit meeting with Xi Jinping. But if we don't, we still have. I'm trying to say we have lots of tools to make Iran weaker if we use them accordingly.
And some of these tools must also rely on showing some muscle to the Europeans in case they not only shirk their duty in military terms, but also fail to apply the sanctions.
Well, yes, it's true, but it's not really. The Europeans aren't the biggest problem here. The biggest problem are the Gulf allies. One of the things that I noted in the article, and this I don't think anybody paid attention to this, Gadi. Last week, the rial, the Iranian currency, increased in value. That's kind of surprising given the state that Iran finds itself. Yeah, it increased in value by 13%. That's quite a jump. You would have expected it to be plummeting. So clearly, I think there's only one way that this can happen, and that is that the central bank is injecting a lot of foreign currency into the system, allowing people who are afraid about a plummeting rial to go park their money in dollars. And they're probably, I think almost certainly, had dollars injected into the economy by other states. I was told by some diplomats that the likely culprit here is Qatar, but also perhaps the Chinese or the Russians. So if it's true that the Qataris did this, what are they doing? Well, they're buying it's protection money because Iran showed that it can hit their oil infrastructure, willing to hit their oil infrastructure. They did hit it. They hit the desalination plants in Bahrain. That's the real vulnerability of the Gulf economies is the desalination plants. 90% of the drinking water in 90% of the drinking water in the Gulf comes from desalinized water. And so the Iranians are saying, we're willing to hit that. We're willing to hit your oil infrastructure. And the coalition has restrained itself in response. We haven't hit any comparable targets in Iran.
All right. So the question that we are paying attention to remains the same, and that's this is a hard phase, I think, of any war, that sometimes you have to persevere, and there is no dramatic turning point when you are chipping away at your enemy's ability to sustain himself, and you only see results if they collapse. That's what we call in Hebrew le'at le'at ve'az bevat achat, slowly, slowly, and then all of a sudden. Anyone who has lived through the collapse of the Soviet Union understands exactly what we are referring to, and I hope that Netanyahu and Trump persevere here. There's also pressure in Israel, but but generally the Israeli consensus is behind the war. And I'll have something to say about that when we reach the dumbest take, because the difference between the studios, the TV studios, and the actual public is staggering in Israel. I think we should say a word about Larijani before we move to the Lebanon segment, Mike.
You want to have a moment of silence for him?
No, you know what they do in your favorite Israeli TV program, a Patriotim, with Yinon Magal, which, by the way, was on my show this week. You might want to listen to him. He doesn't give interviews often. You see his entertainer's persona on his show, but the studios in Israel, whenever we hit someone, they ask, The question is, who will replace him, and was it a good idea? And in On Magal's studio, they distribute baklawa. They give cookies, baklawa, drinks, arak. They're celebrating the fall of our enemies. So but say something about Larijani, because he is a key figure.
Yeah. Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader, saw his demise coming. If not for war, at least for actuarial reasons, and he handed many of his duties as the leader of the country, the executive duties, over to Larijani. So Larijani is the single most important person in the government now. So this is a very significant thing. But as I mentioned, what we now have is a military dictatorship of the IRGC. So behind Larijani, there are faceless IRGC generals whom we don't know well now, who are really running the show, and that it'll be interesting to see who replaces Larijani, if it's just a figurehead or if somebody shows his head as the top guy in the system now. By the way, I just remembered
to show your head.
What's that?
It's maybe not such a good policy at this moment to show your head.
No, it's a bit dangerous. I just realized I forgot to put something in the news that's really important, Gadi, about all of this, and that's the Reuters report that the Gulf states, whom I was just accusing of hedging a minute ago, UAE, Qatar, and so on, and of course they have hedged, and their economic relationships with Iran and China demonstrate this significant hedge. But they are now, according to Reuters, they are informing Trump that he has to go the distance and he has to end this once and for all. And if that's true, and I assume it is true, actually, because I think they can look and see that this IRGC dictatorship has materialized, that these are the hardliners of the hardliners, and their strategy of blackmailing everyone is not going to change unless they are changed out. So that will stiffen Donald Trump, I think. If the Europeans are, of course, telling Trump to end it, the Japanese and the Koreans, I suspect, are telling Trump to end it. But if the Gulf states, who are really on the front line, are saying, no, let's go the distance and we'll help you do it, with help.
And they have economic resources and can help in terms of the crisis generated by the closing of the Straits of Hormuz.
They even have military. They even have military resources that they haven't used. I mean, they all have militaries, and they could hit counter-value targets. And I'm talking theoretically, or they probably don't want to do it because it would be a severe escalation, and they would lay their own energy infrastructure open to attack by the Iranians, and like I said, their desalination plants as well. But they could hit counter-value targets, and send a message to the world that they're not going to sit and take it. Let Iran hold them hostage, hold their critical national civilian infrastructure hostage, without responding in kind. That would be a very interesting development. I put it as low probability, but they have, like you say, economic assets. They have political influence around the world. They can make promises to people to keep them on side in the meantime. But they can also just stiffen Donald Trump, say that you're doing the right thing. This is absolutely essential to the West. It's a very interesting. Well, it's a very interesting development if true.
I'm happy for two reasons for this added information. There's a big reason and a small reason. The big reason is that this can have decisive influence on the calculation that Donald Trump will make in the end. And the small reason is that I've been guessing that is the situation and saying this with more confidence than I actually had in Israeli TV studios, because I thought that at this point, and it's not the first time, because we have experience with the Saudis and the Emiratis in the war with Hamas. They were protesting, in the name of the rights of Palestinians. In public and in private, they have been whispering to Israelis, finish them. Because these are shared enemies. So just one more remark about the IRGC, because you said behind him there are several generals. I think what is interesting now is that, and this has been a long time development within Iran, is that the generals have become general bureaucrats. So in a sense, there is an army structure that has been overtaking the state itself in a slow process, at least since the replacement of Khomeini by Khamenei, because Khamenei has had less prestige and less charisma and relied more on coercion. And he changed presidents. There was the Khatami was a little more moderate, but I think ever since Rafsanjani, the system has been relying on coercion, and the army turned itself into the replacement bureaucracy of the state, marginalizing the formal structure of the state. And now it's like the alien has hatched from this poisonous egg. Now what you call the replacement of the regime with an IRGC dictatorship is actually the culmination of a long process, not a result of the war itself only. Do you agree?
I do, yes. I think this process has been going on for 20 years, and but I don't know. I don't know whether to say the war hastened it, or did the war just remove all of the veils so that we see what's really going on. There's a very credible report, which I didn't include in the news, that the Council of Experts, this is the group that whose constitutional duty is to choose the supreme leader, that the Council of Experts was strong-armed by IRGC intelligence under threats to their families if they didn't choose Mujtaba. So wartime, in wartime stories like this, you never know if it's propaganda, not propaganda, but it seems to be pretty well sourced. And it's not, if it's true, it's not surprising at all that this is what's going on, because that's what we have now, is a kind of North Korea type regime in Iran. Iran is a porous country, so it can't ever be North Korea, but the people running it have a North Korean mentality.
Interesting. We'll probably be discussing the same war next week because A, we have a program every week now, and secondly, the war is not likely to end. Israelis are talking about at least one more month. Americans are talking about weeks. It depends on which report. Trump's one of his remarks was the war will end, but not this week. So we have at least a week till the next Israel update. Are we moving to the Lebanon segment?
Just something to watch out for, Gadi, is will there be an effort by the United States to open the Strait of Hormuz militarily, or I'm talking about by actually controlling the coastline of Iran to push back some of the Iranian forces? I don't think that alone can do it, because you can close the Strait of Tehran effectively just by using drones to hit tankers, and you can launch drones from further away than 100 kilometers. But Iran has a multi-layered system for closing the strait, for threatening shipping in the strait, and some of it involves installations along the coast. And it'll be interesting to see if the United States makes a serious effort to control the coastline through whatever means. The other thing that people are talking about is the possibility of seizing Karg Island And I'm sure that Donald Trump would love to end the war that way, with actual physical control of Karg Island, but through which some 90% of all oil exports from Iran issue. So if you control that, you have your thumb on the windpipe of the Iranian economy. Trump would love that. That would give him the most leverage over the Iranians. We took out the military targets he announced a few days ago on Karg Island, and there are 2,500 Marines that are sailing toward the Gulf as we speak. 2,500 Marines are not enough, I don't think, to take the island. And if they went there now, while the missile and drone arrays are still in good working order, then there'll be sitting ducks on the island. However, once again, if you break the back of the missile and drone forces, and so you can put American ground troops on Karg Island with a minimal threat to their safety, I'm sure Trump will do it.
All right. So now Lebanon. Again, we are faced with the same question that you identified when you said, or when you asked what the meaning of applying pressure is, and remarked that they are almost immune to pressure on the population. We once upon a time, and I think the second Lebanon war, we went to this war saying that Lebanon as a state will pay the price and will therefore have to enforce its interests on Hezbollah. But Lebanon is not really a state. It's run by Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't care about the population any more than the Iranians do. Although with Iran, we moved from Iran's willing to fight us to the last Arab to now they're willing to fight us to the last Iranian. That's a difference. But it seems that Israel, after the experience of the recent rounds of war in Lebanon, understands that without a massive ground operation, this will not work. I personally am happy. As I said, I think Israel should occupy the whole of southern Lebanon until or up to the Litani River, which in some places is 30 kilometers off the border, in some places only 3 kilometers north of our border, but is a significant a geographical obstacle because it's a deep and steep canyon. But Israel also carries a trauma not unlike the American war in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And we have this expression, Habotz Lebanoni, the Lebanese swamp or mud in which the army can sink. What is your interpretation of the planned ground incursion?
Well, one of the things that I find most interesting about it was the support it has from Donald Trump. He was asked about it yesterday, and he said they're a problem and we've got to do something about it, which combined with the other signals about Iran suggests a wider plan by the Israelis and the Americans to really systematically dismantle Iran and its proxy network. So that's interesting. I mean, it's not like the Israelis are freelancing here. They're doing it in coordination with the Americans. America isn't playing a role in the Lebanese campaign, but clearly they have a more than a green light from Trump. So the message.
Do you remember my? Sorry, yeah, continue.
No, the message from Washington and Jerusalem is we're not joking around here anymore. I mean, we are really serious about taking this whole thing this whole thing down. I'm a little less supportive of you about the idea of taking up to the Litani. I think the problem that has to be solved is the drones and missiles, and I don't think that territory is going to solve that problem. It's a secondary issue. I want to see a solution to the drones and missiles. That's what I want to see.
So one remark about that. The drones and missiles indeed pose a problem, but the north has been emptied by anti-tank missiles. And anti-tank missiles are very different from ballistic missiles in that there is no time for an alert. The way the geography is, there are mountains overlooking at very close range Israeli villages and towns on the northern border, and from there you can shoot anti-tank missiles that take a few seconds to come through your living room window. And so they managed to empty the north of population. They will not be able to do this with drones and ballistic missiles in the same way. So even in the face of a mineged, neshek mineged, I would never know the American term for that. It's not that I forget it. It's
Counter.
Counter. It's no, neged is counter. Mineged is you don't have to cross the border in order to apply it. So if you apply artillery, missiles, and so you can do this from across the border. So the weapons that they will have to use north of the Litani will significantly already change the equation and the balance. And also, when we started the war in Lebanon, after the military already knew that the Radwan force has infrastructure of tunnels going under our border, they were and still Herzi Halevi, the general, and the IDF defeatist staff of that war were willing to reach a ceasefire without dismantling all this structure and infrastructure, and without telling the Israeli public that they have found it. So there is also a fear, and after October 7, you understand that fear of an invasion, and that the Litani is a guarantee, more or less, against that option. I wanted to remind you, when I was trying to cut into your at the wrong place into what you were saying, of Amos Hochstein. Do you remember that character?
I do, yeah.
So much has changed since Amos Hochstein has been trying to saddle Israel with an agreement to basically let Hezbollah rearm in Lebanon.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, I think Donald Trump Donald Trump understands the nature of the threat and what needs to be done to put an end to it. And he is expending a lot of personal political capital in order to make this happen. Unfortunately, I think the coalition to do it hasn't been created. Maybe it's not possible. I don't know. But also the world hasn't been explained well enough to the world why this has to happen, and how it's in the interest of everyone. Israel and the United States, and Israel and Lebanon, the United States and Israel and Iran are doing the work of the entire Western alliance. To see the Europeans standing up the last few days saying this is not our war, it's very depressing.
Yeah. How will this influence Israel's image, do you think? Do you think that this will increase the confidence of the healthy parts, and especially the right in Europe, in Israel and the United States, or will the Tucker Carlsons of the West take the line that governments are now taking, that this is Israel's and America's war and it's not our business?
We're in a struggle. This is a deep, deep struggle, and as we've suggested here many times, it goes way beyond the military realm. There's a civilizational malaise in the West, and the fight for revitalization of the West, which this is part of, is going to be a multi-generational fight. So I think we're going to win in the end. I think people are going to wake up, but the number of battles we have, cultural battles and military fights between now and the moment when they wake up, is going to be very long, and it's going to be very large. I don't know how this war is going to end. If this war ends with a capitulation of Iran, this is going to have a fantastic effect. But I can imagine scenarios. What if they get a lucky shot off the IRGC and they hit an American aircraft? This is the worst case scenario. But they hit an American aircraft carrier with an anti-ship ballistic missile. That could change the whole. That could change the whole war in a second. That could Donald Trump might actually sue for go for a ceasefire. Then the war will be remembered like Vietnam as a huge mistake and a failure. I mean, the distance between total victory and complete mistake is not that great.
My sense of Donald Trump is that if that happens, he will double the bet. But we've seen him do the opposite. I don't think he can. I think too much of his prestige, of the American prestige, of his view of making America great again, cannot rely on one aircraft carrier. But of course, I may be wrong with that.
We're gonna find out. So there's things that we don't know too. For example,
but I hope we don't find out if they manage to hit an aircraft carrier. That would indeed be devastating. Given what you say, we may want to start grooming the next generation of Israel Update hosts if the struggle proves
what do you mean by grooming?
I mean that. I mean introducing to the secrets of the profession.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, okay. You're good with that.
That's fine if that's what you mean. Yeah.
So we still have one important segment on the agenda, and this is Sde Teiman, which we discussed at length here. Can we move to that segment, Big Dog?
Big Dog thinks we can, and we have to start it by saying that you got it totally right. Those viewers who have stuck with us through all the lulls and everything, they know that they got the truth here before they got it anywhere else. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is, and because the media is deliberately misleading everyone about this. But the important development is that there is a new Army Advocate General, and what he did is withdraw the indictments against Force 100 soldiers who were accused first of they were in the end they were indicted just for abuse, but they were originally accused by the military police of sexually abusing a prisoner, which pundits on the right immediately said that can't be true. We don't believe that Israeli soldiers are sexually abusing prisoners in Israeli jails, and so the predicament of the actual soldiers is over. And by the way, this week I'm interviewing the commander of the unit, which was indicted.
Wow.
on Force 100. He can finally reveal his face. He can finally give his version. And since I've been covering this more than most journalists in Israel, I will have the honor of a full 1-hour interview with this guy whom I've been in touch with throughout the.
Well, that'll be great. When are you doing that?
Thursday morning. We have a 1 hour.
So next week when we convene next week, you'll be able to tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I hope to have news, but in the meantime, people have to understand what happened. The investigation. First of all, the fact that the military prosecution has decided to end this is not just a victory for justice. They were. There is in Israeli law, there is a clause called defense from justice, which means that if the judicial procedure is going to cause you harm that is beyond any punishment, then it should be stopped, even if a just verdict has not been reached. So that's one consideration that the Advocate General of the Army noted for his withdrawal of the indictments. But note all this, that also that the system is protecting itself. Because if this would have continued, there is enormous foul play behind everything that happened here. There was no reason whatever to accuse them of sexual abuse. I will explain in a minute why not. And trying to find out why they were initially accused of something it was clear they didn't do goes very far, very deep into the system. Who authorized that? Who invented that clause of what do you say for
Charge.
the indictment has
That
charge. That horrendous charge in the indictment. Who initiated it and why? And why did the Advocate General cook a false or a misleading video and leaked it to the press and caused this enormous damage to Israel, and then the later cover-up? After the video was leaked, let me remind our viewers and listeners, there was a public outcry demanding to know who leaked a video that allegedly showed that IDF soldiers were raping Palestinians, and it did not show that, Mike. And since I wrote a big piece about this in Tablet, and it was now recycled. I mean, it was the piece itself remained what it was, but it had a new life on Twitter after the withdrawal of the indictments. And since I get into arguments over Twitter around my pieces, people are saying to me, Israel's detractors are saying, you Zionists, you are now trying to deny something we all saw on video. because the narration of the video created the impression that you see what you did not see. And Mike, the video doesn't show any crime. It certainly doesn't show a sexual crime, but and two things we need to know about the video. First, it was composed of two parts from two different dates, creating the impression of a continuous event. Secondly, they pixelated the middle as at the level of the hip of one of the soldiers, as if behind it something is happening that's too atrocious to show television viewers.
So, in other words, this is the doctoring of the tape alone proves a conspiracy.
Absolutely, and now this conspiracy comes from within the IDF. The worst blood libel about Israel in this war came from the brass of the IDF. This is mind-boggling, and the explanation that is now having traction on Israeli Twitter is that since in the United States you have the Lee Law, the Lee Act, which enables Congress to stop all aid to a country that's accused, not proven, that's accused of sexual crimes. The argument goes this way: there are these circles in the army, in the bureaucracy, in the judicial system, who are allied to the anti-Bibi protesters who wanted, along with the Biden administration, to stop the war. Is there then some conspiracy that goes beyond what we know in an attempt to stop the war, whether with the knowledge of the Biden administration or without the knowledge of the Biden administration? And I'll say this, we have no proof of that conspiracy, but we also do not have any other explanation of why someone would invent the charge of sexual abuse in the middle of a war. And why would they promote it?
It's really worth investigating. I'm sympathetic to this conspiracy theory, and I try to steer. I try to find every explanation for something that is logical before moving to a conspiracy theory. But conspiracies do happen. Russiagate in the United States was a conspiracy against Donald Trump, and large numbers of constituencies in the American elite were involved in it. You can be, the thing to remember here, I think, is that you can be I don't know what word to use here. You can be a kind of passive participant in a conspiracy. So what I'm trying to say is that clearly the Biden administration wanted to end the war, And clearly, they wanted to end the war in such a way that would strengthen the opponents of Netanyahu and topple Netanyahu. This I think, is really obvious. And maybe they were working directly with elements in the military to bring this about, or it could just be that elements in the military were influenced by that climate and thought we can hand this tool to those forces. We're just politically working in the same direction, have the same worldview, but are not actually directly coordinating with anyone. That's also possible. It's totally,
yes,
totally
indeed.
plausible. Totally plausible. This.
Yeah, and so the explanation for why the indictments were withdrawn can have a lot to do with a conspiracy. One of the other reasons that the new Advocate General mentioned in his explanation of why he withdrew the indictments was that the actual alleged victim, the terrorist, the Hamas terrorist, was returned to Gaza. It looks like, why did they return him to Gaza? There is no way to prosecute the charge if the victim is not here.
Get him on Zoom.
So yeah, sure. No, they said that he committed to come back in case he's needed. They actually said that. So the thing, the amazing, the picture that is emerging is that maybe there is a connecting thread between the returning of the terrorists to Gaza and the withdrawal of the indictments, and that is the cessation of the trial. If the trial stops, then the chances to uncover the conspiracy are diminished. And they are also, now there is an investigation that has to do with the Patzarit, with the Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, General Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, the former Advocate General who leaked the tape. And that is the question of the leak itself. And so she is standing trial for that. But who is investigating it? So the Supreme Court initially, after it has been lied to, initially said that the Attorney General of Israel, who also, whether knowingly or not knowingly, covered up for the lack of for the attempt to bury the former attempt to bury the investigation regarding the leak. Because I need to open another more parentheses here and say that all through this process, Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, who leaked the tape, said she was investigating the leak of the tape. She was lying to the Chief of Staff, to the Minister of Defense. She was lying to the Supreme Court. And the Attorney General, who's the head of the prosecution of the State of Israel, also made her case in court. And we don't know if she was lying or she was herself misled. But she is refusing to testify, and she transferred the investigation of the case to a police officer who said she's not a suspect immediately when he was handed this case. Another officer was removed from that investigation by means of an investigation against him. So there's bad smell everywhere. And now the Supreme Court has authorized the state attorney, who is under the Attorney General, to investigate the whole issue. What does this mean? This means that the investigation is in the hands of some of the people who are possibly suspects. And so they will definitely stop it with the rolling snowball would stop with Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi and not go deeper into the system because it's in the hands of that system. So that's the other thing
we never got to the bottom in the U.S. of Russiagate. Never got to the bottom of it. I don't think we ever will. We never got to we never understood who was really in charge when Joe Biden was losing his marbles. And it's funny how everyone has already forgotten the question. And there's no way to really investigate it. Nobody that was involved in that, in hiding from the American public the extent of his disability is ever going to come clean and explain it.
We still hope that in this case we will, because there is one thing in favor of the continuing public pressure. It's the harm done to the soldiers who did this terrible, difficult work of security duties in Sde Teiman. We're running out of time, but there is one more thing that I have to say, and it was not my tablet piece, because I discovered that piece of information only later, and I'm still in the process of attempting to make the case for it. It's still a hypothesis rather than a firm conclusion, but it seems, Mike, if this conspiracy was not complicated enough for you, it seems that the entity that framed the soldiers originally was Shabak, Shin Bet. This came from under Ronen Bar. And if you want the grand theory, which we don't yet endorse fully, but is certainly a possibility of an attempt to stop the war, Ronen Bar was a rogue head of Shabak, an anti-Netanyahu operator close to the anti-Netanyahu circles that initiated and ran the anti-Netanyahu protest. So if this happened under Ronen Bar from within the Shabak, then Mike, we can have a sequel to the original screenplay of the Sde Teiman affair, and I'll update you on anything I have, because this investigation is still underway.
Okay.
Oh, so I think since we're running out of time, did I shock you so badly that you were left speechless? That never happened before.
No. I just wanted a smooth transition to the next segment. That's all.
Okay, the next segment is
always
the
thinking about the transition.
And let's start with your dumb mistake, so that I can get what do you say? Regain my breath? Is that
catch your breath?
Catch my breath. Catch my breath. Yeah.
So my dumb mistake is Tucker Carlson. He came out and announced that he is under investigation by the CIA for his contacts with Iran, and the CIA is gathering evidence in order to present it to the Department of Justice, so that he can be indicted for being a foreign agent of a foreign power. Of course, this is Tucker Carlson. All we know about the quote unquote CIA investigation of Tucker Carlson is from Tucker Carlson. Oh, are you?
No, it's a warning before the siren. It's not the siren yet.
Oh, so if we hurry up, we can finish before you go into the shelter. Yeah. So it's only coming from Tucker Carlson, so it should be taken with a big grain of salt. Either he's making it up entirely in order to present himself as a victim because of his opposition to this war, and he is doing more, taking a new step in creating a current of opinion on the MAGA right that is opposed to Donald Trump, and he's being supported by Marjorie Taylor Greene, Megyn Kelly, and others. Or he is actually being investigated in some way, probably not by the CIA, but that some of his contacts with the Iranians have crossed a line, and this is a way of getting out in front of the story and presenting himself as a victim of state oppression, rather than somebody who's been engaged in activities that he shouldn't be engaged in. But it's all very interesting. It's led this is in a number of other events on the very online right, led Donald Trump to come out with a tweet defending Mark Levin. Mark Levin is the prominent conservative radio host who's been very supportive of Israel and very supportive of Donald Trump, supportive of this war, very critical of Tucker Carlson, very critical of Megyn Kelly. And Trump came out and defended Levin, which means he's also attacking the whole new current that Tucker Carlson represents. This is all a very, very.
Which you have been advocating and wondering about for a long time here on this show.
I've been hoping for this moment. We're getting closer and closer to the repudiation by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance of this very, very noxious, this horrendous personality, Tucker Carlson. So it's all good news, basically. The dumbest take is good news.
My dumbest take has to do with a very prominent Israeli journalist. He's a military analyst, and he was the one who first announced the discovery of the military nuclear program of Iran way back. And the funny thing is, and he's from the mainstream of the legacy media where he grew, and these guys, while the Israeli public is very determined to pursue this war till the end and very supportive of it, and even people who are professional in Bibi derangement syndrome victims have managed to give Netanyahu a compliment. Even Ben Caspit, your friend, said Netanyahu deserves credit for the war. But Ron Ben Ishai, this. Yeah, he did. Celebrated this on the radio show because he was led to it. He said we should compliment our Air Force and our Army and the chiefs of staff, and then he said, and the government, and then there was a pause, and even the Prime Minister, and Ynnon Magal broke into a dance in the studio. And Ron Ben Ishai is saying that the Israeli public is tired of the war. And how did he come to that conclusion? Because he listened to the discourse in the studios, in the TV studios. So, of course, the defeatist TV studios who have been preaching surrender since Rafah, not from now, are the indication that the Israeli public is losing its nerve. It's just these people live in a completely sealed off echo chamber and are drifting away from the Israeli public. And my metaphor for this, Mike, is that these people are drifting into sea on a raft, and they're calling to the shore that it's sinking. That's how off the mark they are. They think that the continent is sinking, or the continent is drifting away into sea. That's their view of our politics. So we now have two segments. We need to finish this in a rush because I'm already late. So one is, we said we'll have a quote, and Mike will do the segment of a reader's comments until we find the quote.
So, Gadi, readers' comments. We have one from at A-VC3MF. I have no idea if this is a man or a woman, but he or she says, "Hey guys, I'm getting very jealous and would like to complain against discriminatory behavior and neglect because you never quote my supportive messages and love. I've been sending lots of love, and it's especially bad that you're doing that because I follow you from Belgium, and you should appreciate it because many in the U.S. support your show and in Israel, while here it's hostile territory, and I'm not even a Jew. So we have a Gentile like me supporting us with lots of love, and we never, in Belgium, and we never mention him or her. So anyway, thank you, Gentile supporter of Israel Update in Belgium. There used to be a fantastic website, by the way, Gadi, called Belgian Solutions. I don't know if it still exists. I used to go to it often. I loved it because Belgium is a crazy place, with the Dutch speakers and the French speakers. And so in Belgian Solutions, we'll show you things like there was a tunnel in the middle of Brussels that was temporarily shut down. And they had a sign up in French and in Dutch, and the French sign, Flemish, and the French sign said, it would be closed from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And the Flemish sign said it would be closed from 2 to 4. You know, so, this sort of thing. So I have it's my kind of country.
I think you just came up with the alternative to the two-state solution.
Yeah, you live in two different
realities. We'll have a Palestinian state in all the odd months and a Jewish state in all the even months. Mike, another one, because I really have to go. Do we have another one, or shall I just go to the court?
Well, I'll just tell you to make it quick that there's a difference of opinion in the comments. I won't name the people. You can see it there. Those who like the fact that Tablet is trying to discipline us and keep it shorter and more organized, and those who like our chaotic digressions. And so there's a fight there. So we encourage you to in the comments join the fight. Do you like chaos? And
on our side, join the fight on our side.
On our side, we like chaos and silly humor, or do you like do you like to just have it really well organized and stick to the serious issues?
And I shall end with a quote, after which you will implore people to like us, comment, and what's the third thing? Like us,
subscribe, like,
and subscribe.
Comment.
Yeah. So I misattributed a comment to General Omar Bradley, and Quinn found out that it was actually General Robert Barrow. And the quote is, "Amateurs talk about strategy and tactics, professionals talk about logistics and sustainability in warfare." And that's a wonderful quote for all the generals who appear in Israeli studios and ask, what is the exit strategy? As if Israel should explain the exit strategy in a studio. So this is a good reminder for them that as generals, strategy is not their domain. Why don't they stick to logistics and war sustainability? And that is it from us for today, and we will see you, as we now do, next week too. Please don't forget to like us, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.